thank you everyone for joining us on this webinar. Um, Give you a little bit of background about AssetOptics, who we are. AssetOptics is a Salesforce OEM app exchange business partner based in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. And we offer the leading 100% native Salesforce CRM based enterprise asset management solution. We've been in business for 5.5, well, really been in business 6 years, launched our solution on the App Exchange 5.5 years ago, and we have customers in 11 different countries across multiple industry verticals. One of the things that makes AssetOptics quite unique is, in fact, our solution is built entirely on the Salesforce CRM technology platform. And we deliver the core functionality traditionally found in a CMMS or EAM type of application. And that key functionality really being driven around asset management, preventive maintenance, scheduling, work order management, MRO inventory management, and MRO procurement. We deliver the solution across multiple user platforms, if you will, or technologies. The solution can be accessed, through a browser. Of course, being the fact that it is built on the Salesforce platform means it's a 100% multi-tenant cloud-based solution. It is accessible via a browser, accessible via a smartphone using Salesforce One Mobile, as well as accessible via a tablet. We're going to get into a bit of a demonstration here, but prior to that, we're going to present here a little eye chart test, but just kind of cover some of the key functions that are delivered in our EAM CMMS solution. So the 5 key areas of our application are asset management, preventive maintenance scheduling, work order management, inventory, and procurement. And we deliver a lot of the functionality, found in the, current best of breed EAM type solutions. So from an asset management perspective, we give you the ability to create to catalog all of your assets and the appropriate attributes around those assets. You can build an asset hierarchy to create overall systems, systems of assets, if you will. And that's one of the key things. So let me jump back there. One of the key things in being able to perform asset management is to be able to organize assets. You can specify warranty dates, many other attributes, and directly from every individual asset, you can easily see work order history. We give you the ability to set up hour meters, odometers, consumption meters, all that are linked to individual assets, as well as tracking licenses and permits and registrations at the asset level, as well as at an individual user level. And you have the ability to create and link documents and attachments, to those assets. I'm not going to go through every one of these bullet point by bullet point, but hit some of the key pieces. Within our preventive maintenance scheduling solution, what you'll find is that we give you the ability to create a reusable model work order, and think of that as essentially a pre-planned work order, or somewhat otherwise known as job plans. Those job plans can be linked to assets through a preventive maintenance scheduling process. And we support many, many different ways to perform preventive maintenance scheduling. everything from simple calendar-based and meter-based PM schedules to creating hierarchical relationships of PM schedules so that you can manage the overall grouping of how PMs are scheduled. The preventive maintenance scheduling solution has this type of set it and forget it overall approach where you build the PMs, you can specify release dates, or rather specify release windows, and that is how far in advance of the due dates that the PMs will generate work orders, and the system just automatically generates work orders and puts them into a backlog. And at every preventive maintenance schedule level, you can predefine who an assigned technician would be for that specific job. So that way it really helps the planner scheduler to work rather efficiently. So the PM system generates work orders from the work order templates, or what we call the model work orders. Work orders can also be submitted, directly from end users. If you think about, handling the break-fix work order business problem, we have a variety of ways that work orders can be submitted. There is an email to work order functionality. You can directly enter a case into Salesforce and have that converted into work orders, or you could submit a work request via a Salesforce community and have an authenticated user experience to submit those. Given the fact that AssetOptics is a 100% nativeforce.com solution, you have full workflow approval processing enabled in the application. And we find this to be very, very valuable for our customers. Our work orders allow you to plan labor by different craft group at the task level. You can plan parts on a work order, and then based upon the status of the parts, inventory gets committed, and that actually drives the replenishment cycle. We track all of the different planned versus actual costs on the work order, everything from materials, labor, miscellaneous charges. And you can leverage the Salesforce Chatter collaboration platform as a means of communicating, work order, updates to work orders. And the work orders, as well as every other type of record in our application, has full audit trail tracking. Down to the field, down to the record. It's easy to keep up with who made what particular changes in the application, who changed what data. Moving on from an MRO inventory management perspective, we provide multi-site inventory management. So you have the ability to set up an enterprise-wide catalog master. You can associate that catalog item with different storerooms and then specify your inventory replenishment policies for that stock item at that storeroom. So you can set your minimum stock quantity, your preferred vendor, and then based upon the usage of those items when you issue it out, when you perform gain and shrink adjustments, and then you make commitments for parts on work orders, the system will automatically generate a purchase requisition. So we also support pick ticketing or what we call a stock issue request. And stock issue requests can be easily created from the planned parts that are on a work order or just manually created. You also have the ability where you can backflush or automatically issue all of the planned parts to a work order at one time and bypassing the stock issue request process. And we find this to be quite efficient whenever parts can be kitted all at one time directly from inventory. And one of the key features around our inventory management function is that inventory and assets, stock item inventory and assets, are tied together so that you can track serialized inventory and solve the repairable spares business problem. So something that is a high value repair part, a component, it can exist simultaneously as a stock item in inventory as well as an asset record, so that you can track and follow and solve the problem of where has this component been installed, as well as within that functional location where it is installed, you could see the history of all the serialized components there. And then lastly, from a functional perspective, we offer a full MRO procurement solution where, again, you can have purchase requisitions automatically created from the inventory system based upon the replenishment needs. You can manually input purchase requisitions and utilize Salesforce approval processing to route those for an approval, and they can be, conditional-based approvals. We purchase stock, non-stock inventory, services-based purchasing, and you also have the ability on a purchase order where upon receipt of an item, you can directly issue it to the planned work order and bypass the stocking process and pass, those dedicated purchases right, onto the work order and kit it, for future pickup. Same thing goes with any purchased services. We're going to highlight one customer before we go into our demonstration, and we've elected to talk about the city of Elgin, which is a western suburb of Chicago. The city of Elgin, obviously a public sector type customer, but I would reference them as Elgin has a very, very comprehensive deployment of not only AssetOptics, but also of Salesforce Service Cloud and some other unique integrations. So Elgin has a complete deployment of asset management, work order management, PM scheduling, MRO inventory. A couple of other unique things that we have here is that we have integration tied into the state of Illinois' 811 call center. We are directly tied into the city of Elgin's 311 call center. The 311 would be non-emergency city services. And the Elgin 311 call center is powered by the Salesforce CRM call management solution, which is basically Salesforce Service Cloud. The state of Illinois' 811 call center is a different technology stack. We're also fully integrated with a native Force.com permitting and code enforcement system from a partner called Basic Gov, as well as assets are integrated and can be displayed through Esri ArcGIS, and there's bidirectional data synchronization and updates. In other words, you can update attributes of Esri, of the GIS assets within the AssetOptics solution, and they update back into Esri as well as in the reverse order. It's a widespread, the city of Elgin is a population of about 100,000. It's a fairly widespread deployment of AssetOptics, across all the departments of public works. So we're talking about, the city's building maintenance department, the fleet maintenance department handling, all of the city's fleet assets, the water and sewer department, as well as street and traffic. AssetOptics is deployed using Salesforce One Mobile, and technicians in the field access it on iPads, iPhones, and of course they can access the full browser also. One of the unique use cases with Elgin, which I think effectively displays many of the different technologies that are available with AssetOptics, is our integration into the state of Illinois' 811 call center. And 811 is the nationwide type of call center number where you call before you dig. Every state in the U.S. has an 811 call center. And essentially how that process works is a citizen or a contractor calls the Illinois 811 call center. They also had the ability to enter requests directly, from a web app that the Illinois call center provides. When a request is logged into their call center and it falls within the bounds of the city of Elgin, and they have to go out and mark underground utilities, the city receives an email with an XML document attached to it. That email gets sent to a Salesforce workflow where that workflow takes the XML document, reads all the appropriate tags in the document, and maps it to a work order in AssetOptics. So automatically a work order gets created in AssetOptics. There are a set of rules that evaluate all the details of that particular work order. And most importantly, it's looking at the priority and the requested marking times that's driven from, when the dig needs to happen. Because some of these are 48, 72 hours in advance, but some of these are emergency conditions where a construction crew might very well have knocked out a utility line of some sort, and then further repairs have to be made. So whenever the work order gets received and generated into AssetOptics, a notification gets presented to the technicians in the city who have responsibility for doing these underground utility locates. They get a notice on Salesforce One Mobile. At the same time that they get that notice, a time-based workflow gets initiated so that based upon the priority and the requested dig start time, the city's management staff is able to monitor those. If the technician checks in to perform the work within the certain time frame, the whole process works, properly. If you get within a certain time frame of when the dig is supposed to start, and someone has been unable to respond to it, then the city public works staff receives a notification that pops up, on their desktop through their browser, and then they can go reschedule to another technician or apply additional resources. We'll send out this PowerPoint, but if you're interested in learning more, about what we did here, you can read an article that was published by the City of Elgin on the Government Computing News, and the URL to that article is located on the bottom of this PowerPoint. So as I indicated before, we have, customers across multiple industry verticals in different countries. So, why do customers choose AssetOptics? It really kind of boils down to a few key, a few key drivers. One is the fact that our application is a 100% native Force.com solution and is seamlessly integrated with Salesforce Sales and Service Cloud. And you get all of the power of the Salesforce platform that goes with that. We offer a very, very comprehensive footprint of CMMS functionality, around the core areas. The solution is cost effective. We use named user pricing at $65 per month per named user, and that includes the underlying Salesforce platform license. So there are no additional licensing requirements that are needed, for technician type users. And lastly, it's because AssetOptics has a proven track record of success. If you go to the Salesforce App Exchange, you can read some of our customer reviews. What you will find is a long-standing history of 5-star reviews that speak to the quality of the solution, and more importantly, the service and support that our customers receive. So with that, we're going to jump into a couple of scenarios on the product demonstration. So if one is previously familiar with Salesforce.com, this should look rather intuitive. So we'll take a look here. The user navigates by clicking on the appropriate tabs, and we take advantage of many of the platform features. So let's say that I want to look at work orders. I can click on the work orders tab, and then I can have a list. I can have a view list right here, and this enables you to filter the list of work orders that are retrieved. So this is like an online reporting, if you will. So I'm going to select work orders, open, release, and this changes and gives me a list of all the work orders that are in one of the open/release statuses of ready to schedule, scheduled, in progress. When you define these views, you can specify what fields show and the sort order of those fields. Now, as part of our application, we deliver views, and we deliver reports, we deliver standard page layouts, and the solution is designed with industry, I dare use the word best practices, but certainly, very solid EAM business practices are incorporated in the overall design of the application. So when a user has a list, they can quickly just click on the link, and it takes them to that underlying document or work order in this case. Okay, so we have a very robust search functionality, and you can search on keywords, you can search on numbers, and I'm just going to type in the word belt, and I can see that I get 3 work orders. I can see that I get 3 work orders returned that have something to do with a belt. It's finding this, and then I have a list of spare parts that get returned here. I can click here and I can show more, but I can also further limit this list down and say, you know what, I want to limit this down to, I'm searching for a belt, but I want to find some 450 belt. I can just type that and limit the list down a little bit more. So let's just say I'm also, instead of that, I'm looking for a 3V. Well, we don't have any 3V belts. Should probably know the data set a little bit better. Or 5V, so I can see that I've got, a 5VX 750 belt and stored in 2 different storerooms. This CS, which is, I believe this is a central stores, and the satellite storeroom right here. So whenever I perform that search, I can then click on the record, and it would take me to that underlying record just as I clicked on it from a list view. You'll notice over here on the left-hand side, there's this list of recent items. This is really a good aid for the end user to be able to quickly go back to records that they had previously touched. A link to the past 10 records that you touch will be automatically dropped in here, and you can hover over one of these recent items, and then it will bring up a small page layout. I could just directly edit. I could say I want to edit that record, and it would take me directly to that record. Or I could just click on it, and it would take me directly to that particular record. So enough about the overall navigation of the application. Let's go in and let's take a look at some AssetOptics functionality. So I'm going to click on the Asset Tags tab, and just for ease of use, I'm going to select an asset record that is in my recently viewed list. So this is an air handler, and the parent asset is this HVAC system, and this is located at customer A, and it's tied to a group of assets called the HVAC assets. You'll also notice that I can have a current contract associated with this, and this would tell me, what contract that maintenance is performed for this asset. If you are in an implementation where these are customer-owned assets and you are performing contract maintenance for that customer. So this would be set up as if you were a service provider. You can track many, many different attributes of those assets, and these can be as simple as a drop-down pick list, or they can be dependent type pick list here where you have classes and then subclasses that are dependent upon those. So hypothetically, if I chose water system, I might have this type of subclass. If I chose HVAC, I would have these types of subclasses. So we're just going to cancel that so we don't change the underlying data. And you can also, as one would expect, track nameplate data. It's very easy to add custom fields onto the underlying objects. If there are other attributes that you need to track that aren't included as part of the standard application. Now you'll also notice that we have an asset hierarchy here. So the asset hierarchy gets constructed whenever you specify what the parent asset is. And when you click on an asset, the asset hierarchy explodes to find that particular asset, so that you can see where that asset resides within the context of the entire system of assets. So we can see here the asset that this air handler, number one, is part of this HVAC system. And in fact, there are even children assets that are part of this. If we click the node and break that open more, we can see that there's a fan motor and a squirrel cage that is tied to this blower. And these are down here as components because they're serialized and we're tracking them. Because one might, just discard, let's say, a 5-horse motor, but if you're tracking, a 30 horsepower motor, you want to keep up with the history of that motor because you may send it out to be rewound and then put it into a different location. So again, I mentioned earlier the notion of serialized inventory management and component tracking. We handle all that functionality so that things like this fan motor can be removed from service and put in and repaired, put into inventory, then brought back out of service. The other key feature, from an asset management perspective is the notion of geolocation tracking. Every asset can have a latitude and a longitude associated with that, and then you can view, assets on an embedded Google map. Now you can also update the locations of these assets either through, Esri-based integration, or you can even update things directly from your mobile device so that if you are on site and you have a mobile asset that you move around, you can merely say update the location from the mobile device and it will grab the geo coordinates off of your smartphone and then update that asset record. The same holds true for work orders, and that's how we support our geofencing process on work orders. So if we kind of continue down more on this page layout for this asset, of course, you could see that there was a case that was linked to it and generated from this asset. You can see the work order history, and this is going to be the history of all work orders, both corrective and preventive maintenance work orders that are in that asset history. You can also see preventive maintenance schedules, and if we go take a look at an individual PM schedule, as I had earlier indicated, our PM schedules are built from a model work order. So if we drilled into the details of this work order right here, what you would see are a set of instructions, a task that defines with some standard hours, although it isn't showing in this list right here, the standard hours to perform that task, and any necessary parts to perform that particular job. So we're going to go back to this PM. This preventive maintenance schedule is set up on a calendar basis right here. And we can see that every 13 weeks, we are to perform this PM schedule. At the individual PM schedule, we give you the ability to specify a release window. And what the release window does is it tells you how many days in advance of the preventive maintenance due date, of the PM due date, will the work order get generated and released. So there are scripts or jobs, if you will, that run on a nightly basis in the background, and it generates the work order, puts it into the work order queue, so that the technician or a planner can automatically see those work orders that are generated. And speaking of kind of some process automation, if you will, at the work order level, you can specify a default user to whom all of the work orders that are automatically generated for this particular PM schedule will get assigned to, and it will automatically assign that, and it will put the due date onto that work order. Now, that's not to be confused with the actual scheduling of, the schedule date that you're going to do it. The system populates the due dates and then puts them into the backlog so that they can be scheduled, so that the jobs can be scheduled based upon your availability to the assets as well as your availability of work resources. If you're going to have this assigned to a contractor, then there's a default account assignment, and then the default user assignment would really be the technician or the planner scheduler who would coordinate with that contractor to have them come in and do the work. One of the other things that you'll notice about our preventive maintenance scheduling, well, as a quick note, this one here isn't populated, but we also perform meter-based scheduling. So if you want to schedule things by hour meters, you can link an hour meter for that asset, or really for any asset along the hierarchy, to that to that PM. And when meter readings are entered, we do some analysis on the historical run rate of that asset, and we will project out into the future when the PM will be due based upon the historical run rate, and then it will automatically release it based upon a release window. At every PM, based upon all the different scheduling methods, we calculate a planned number of occurrences for that job per year. And then when you take those planned number of occurrences, we then get all of the template data from the job plan, from the model work order, and we calculate how many planned labor hours per year that would equate to. So what would be my planned labor cost per year, my planned parts cost, my planned miscellaneous charges, and in fact, what is the total planned PM cost for this specific PM per year? Now you can also aggregate all of that data at the asset level. So I could say, what are the costs for all PMs for the year? Okay. And then when you are on an individual PM schedule, you can see the work order history for that specific PM. Now, all of these work orders also show up in the history for the actual asset. So when we look at work order history on an asset, this is for all work orders associated with that asset. But when we drill down and we look at an individual preventive maintenance schedule, the work order history is just the PM work orders that are linked to this particular PM, linked to this asset. Okay. So kind of moving through here, we're going to touch a little bit around what do the work orders look like. So when I generate a work order, work orders can have, there's a couple different ways that the instructions can be defined on a work order, but the instructions can be put in text form, and you could also create a checklist where the user checks them off as tasks individually as they go along. We support 3 cost buckets on a work order: miscellaneous charges, parts, as well as labor. And the planned parts and the planned labor all come from the parts that are on the job and how much labor you're scheduled to it. The actuals all come from the parts that I issue and the time that I book to the overall job. So if we if we wanted to see a little bit about what the technician's user experience would be on a work order, I'm just going to mirror my iPad up here, and this is a real live view of my iPad. It should mirror up onto my desktop here just in a second. Let's see if we can get this to show. There we go. Okay, so this is this is my actual iPad right here, and this is sales. And if you look here on the lower left hand side, right here, this is the Salesforce mobile application available on the App Store, and it also runs on Android. So you touch that, and then it is the current modern day paradigm of navigating through mobile applications with a menu bar, set over to the left. I'm going to select this this view called work orders. And let me get this again: scheduled work orders. And it's going to take me to a pane, and all these fields that are shown are rather configurable. I'm going to select this work order. Now, this is this was an emergency work order that was generated from a case earlier, and I can see the details on that work order. I'm actually pushing up on my iPad, so I can see all the detailed information around that particular work order. I could navigate to that asset by clicking on the blue link. But if you look down here in the lower section, I have these little command icons. I can touch the 3 little ellipses to show more, and it would show me all of the icons, or I could just execute them by choosing down on the bottom. So let's say a technician goes and responds to this job. He or she knew that these were the jobs based upon what was showing up in their work for today, and I'm going to check in. So I hit check in. It shows me the status, status update, and I hit save. So now the work order status has been updated from scheduled to in progress. I can go and perform, do my necessary repairs, and then I can log a note directly, from the mobile device. And I'm just going to put something here that says a completion note. And I can even utilize, the microphone. Adjusted the thermostat and inspected the damper. Everything appears to be working properly. And I can say done, and I am going to I'm going to save right here, and this note is going to get logged onto the work request. I can also, if I wanted to do something like post a picture, I can say, take a photo, and then I can just bring this up and take a photo of that particular of that piece of equipment, and then I can make a note right here and say photo, put any type of comments on it and submit this, and the photo that I just took is going to get attached to the work order. Now the last thing I'm going to do is just hit this, hit this link to say complete the work order, and I'm not going to log any failure codes or any action codes, but just accept the defaults, and I'm going to log that. So if we go back here, into the full browser, I can see this work order right here shows up in my recent items list. We'll notice here that was work order number 1380. The status has been updated to completed. We could see that there's a note right here. I could go view this note, and I can also view the attachment. I could also view the attachment that got automatically loaded onto here that I just took off of my smartphone device. So quite a bit of ease of use capabilities there. Couple quick things. We're going to just kind of briefly talk about MRO inventory management so that we can get a little bit of feel for that, and then we will we'll take questions. Certainly, you can go ahead and input any questions that you have in the chat window right now. So let's go take a look at MRO inventory management. I am going to click on the Parts tab right here, and I'm just going to select a recent item. So what you'll see here is that I am on this part ID 5VX-750. That's linked to this particular product, and this is the catalog item. So if I drill up, and we've been here before because we searched on this item, we can see that this particular product is stocked in two different storerooms, satellite storeroom number 1 as well as the central store. If we go drill into this particular part ID, we can take a look at some of the information related to that item master setup, if you will, or that stock item setup. There are serialized attributes that can be specified, but in this scenario, these drive belts are not serialized. We can define a minimum stocking quantity, a stock unit of measure, a purchase unit of measure, and a pack quantity. So you don't have to necessarily stock it and issue it in the unit of measure that you purchase it. You can specify those differently and do the pack quantity to tell me how many is in my purchase pack. We currently have, also you can have multiple bin locations in the storerooms. You can have a primary bin as well as multiple secondary bins and manage the on-hand quantity in each of those bins, as well as you can transfer parts between the different bins. You can transfer parts across different storerooms if necessary. So we'll see here that we have an on-hand quantity of 10, we have an open commit of 5, and what this means is that there are 5 that are currently planned on work orders, and those work orders have been released. We have an available quantity of 5, and of course the available quantity is the open commit subtracted. You take the on-hand, subtract the open commit to give us the available quantity. These are soft commitments. You can still go issue inventory against a different work order. You will then just have a shortfall. We can specify our vendors as well as the purchase price, and this is in the purchase unit of measure, as well as keep up with last dates for transactions. We have multiple valuation methods that you can use to manage inventory: standard, last in, weighted average. And of course, as you have all of your different transactions, we log all those inventory transactions. So I can see that there was a gain adjustment, a shrink adjustment, an issue, and this was an issue to this particular work order. As well as, I can see what work orders that this part is planned on, as well as I could see what are the stock issue requests for the pick tickets that this line item was on, as well as what purchase order lines it was tied to. And, lastly, I can tie other notes and attachments to this, and I could display a picture of this particular part if I wanted to. As I'd indicated earlier, the system will calculate my replenishment quantity based upon my minimum stock. So we've got 5 that are available. If I just wanted to bump this up and say my minimum stock was 8, we're going to see that it will calculate that we need to reorder 3. And when we and the system will automatically generate and aggregate purchase requisitions for the appropriate preferred vendor. So this can be done manually, or it can also be done all automatically. The system can generate a purchase requisition. I'm just going to do this manually. And if we were to look over here on the purchase orders tab and say, show me today's requisitions, I would see this rec that just got created with these line items on it. I could submit it for an approval. It goes out for an approval request. I can approve it from my home page. I can approve it from my home page, or I can approve it from my mobile device. So I'm just going to go ahead and approve this, and you'll see that the status has been updated to approved. I'm going to take it from approved, and I'm just going to go ahead and change this to released. And this would indicate now the status that I've issued this to the vendor. I can print it. I can email this to the vendor. There are a number of different options around how you get that. When I receive these items, I can actually receive, I could do partial receipts, receive, one line item at a time, or I could actually receive everything into inventory, all at once. And of course, now that I've received this all goes back into the stock item inventory, and we can see, the history of that. So if we take a look at this right here, we see that at 12:52, we placed this on order for a dozen. And then we received, at 12:53, we received a dozen. Of course, on the PO, it said 1. Why? Because this has a pack quantity of 12. We stock in the eaches, we buy in the case, and there's 12 in a case. So with that, I believe that is going to, that wraps up, all of our, that wraps up our solution demonstration for right now. If you have any questions, if you'll type the questions into the chat window, we'll get to those one by one. So the first question that I have here is it says, what are the total licensing costs? So as I'd earlier indicated, is that our subscriptions are $65 per named user per month. We have a 5-user minimum license, and subscription term lengths are 12 months. So 5-user, 12-month minimum subscription term. That includes what is known as a Salesforce platform license. If you are an existing Salesforce customer, or rather, even if you wish to deploy functionality beyond AssetOptics, and some of the users would require access to then Service Cloud, then you would have to acquire a full Service Cloud license directly from Salesforce, but we can certainly facilitate that happening. If you're an existing Salesforce customer, then you already know how to do that. But otherwise, if you have end users who are accessing AssetOptics and the platform features, then those prices are $65 per month per named user. You see, I think there's an additional question here. How does data import and export work? The easiest way for me to do that is really to even just kind of show you here. I'm just going to log in through another Salesforce partner utility called DataLoader.io, and you can export data. You can do this through the Salesforce browser, but this is accessing everything authenticated with your user credentials, and it's a very superior, if you will, free utility. So let's say that we want to export part data. I'm going to grab this part data right here, and then I could specify some. I'm just going to select all the fields, and I could specify some attributes. So I'm going to say I want to export all of the part data where the on-hand quantity is greater than 0, and I'm going to add that to the criteria, and I'm going to hit next, and I see that there's 130 records here in my demo. I'm going to hit export, and it's going to download. It's going to download this into a CSV file, and then we can take a look at that right there. Open up the CSV file, and there we have it. We've got all of the data right there. Also, and we'll see that the ABC codes aren't populated here, but let's just say that we wanted to update data, if you will. I'm just gonna select here, and we're just gonna update this this ABC code from A to B on everything, and then I'm going to save this workbook. It's going to be in my downloaded files right now, and we're going to say save. So if you want to update data or import, but we're going to go ahead and import, and we're just going to say update these existing records, and we're going to say update the part, and we're going to get this one right here. We're going to upload the CSV file that's on my downloads. We're going to grab that one, and well, we've got some duplicate values there on the header. We're not going to go through it, but essentially you upload the file, you map the data fields. The fields will actually be automatically mapped because we downloaded it and it got the appropriate API names. So it will automatically map everything. So again, there's a number of different ways, whether you're using these third-party utility tools, whether you are just using the standard report function in Salesforce, and this is rather powerful here. So I can just look at a list of open work orders, and I can say hit me a printable view right here, and this generates an Excel spreadsheet directly from the report. I also have within the normal user navigation experience, I have a data import wizard that will kind of step me through point by point or step by step on the data imports. So given the fact that everything is accessible via an open API, it's very easy to get data in and out of the application. All right, I see that I have one more question here, and that is related to dashboards. We didn't talk about dashboards, but let me just I'll answer the question within the context of a few things here. AssetOptics is 100% nativeforce.com, thus meaning you get all of the reporting and analytics capabilities of the force.com platform. The dashboards, these dashboard components are linked and live to the underlying report that powers them. So if I see right here that I have 142 open work orders and they are grouped by status, I can click onto that component and it takes me to the underlying records, and I can drill into one of those work orders right there. Of course, I could have, I'm only seeing a snapshot of my dashboard, but you can have many, many different dashboards. We deliver AssetOptics with, I think it's approximately 80 standard reports. And you can create your own reports by merely copying the existing ones or creating reports from scratch. We deliver predefined dashboards, and you can clone the dashboards and modify them, or you can create your own dashboards from scratch. So I see I do not have any more questions at this point in time. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and we will email a copy of the PowerPoint out to all of the attendees. And you may also, within a matter of a few days, you will find a recording of this webinar available from the AssetOptics website. So again, I'd like to thank everyone for their time and attendance. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me directly at mike.edwards@assetoptics.com, and you'll also receive a follow-up email soliciting any feedback. So thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and if you have a wonderful day and a happy holidays. Thank you.